I know, it better be a really, really big round of applause. I reject them. Okay, I would like to welcome everybody to this evening's debate on that this House would legalise all drugs, and I'm here to firmly propose this motion. Okay, so the model for the proposition is pretty basic, that we're going to legalise all drugs, i.e. not make them illegal anymore. I feel enough said on that. We've had enough debates on this topic. Okay, so I'm going to make 4 points here tonight. My first point being is that we're going to save resources. The second is how we're going to help the actual drug addicts that are the true victims of drugs. Third is going to be a source of revenue, which we all love. And fourth, we're going to be helping society as a whole. Okay, so without further ado, on to my first point. How this is going to save money and time, so basically better for everybody. Okay. As we all know, the whole drugs war, it takes up a lot of time. Police time, prison time. So, it's out there and everyone knows about it and, the media are writing a lot about it. So a lot of money is being funneled into this. So I feel that if we legalize drugs, i.e. no longer made it illegal, we would be freeing up spaces in prisons, which would be better for the economy, better for resources, which I think would be very important. In California alone, where they have recently decriminalized possession of drugs, 170,000 of its inmates, which is 1/5 of its total inmate population, are in there for drug-related crimes. Now, I don't know the exact amount that is spent on inmates and the care for them, but I'm told it is quite a lot. And wouldn't this money, I feel, be better spent? And I'll go into this further later on. But if we decriminalize drugs, then we would be freeing up these spaces in prisons, giving more space and more time for the real criminals of societies. Like I said, this would, save thousands, and this I will go into later, how it'll help society as a whole, as well as preventing and helping the drug addicts themselves. Also, the point, about like by saving places in prisons, not only will save places in prison, I want to point out the point, by decriminalizing drugs, we will be helping the environment. Okay, every time someone is caught with drugs, either, in small cases, they will have an on-the-spot fine. On-the-spot fine requires a lot of legislation and paperwork. By removing the criminalization of drugs, we will be saving, no thank you, we will be saving on all this unnecessary paperwork that we know just gets shredded gets just shredded in the end. And then even worse, sent to incineration plants. So guys, we would be saving trees and polar bears if we decriminalize drugs. And also, can I just say that these sentences are ineffective, and I think they are pointless. In reality, the sentences are shorter than society says they are. In Denmark, for example, the sentence for drugs possession and trafficking is 10 years, when in reality, it is only 20 months that is actually served by an average inmate. I think this undermines the legal system as a whole, which, is kind of harmful to society, I think. Okay, go ahead.
Do you not accept that judicial discretion is something good, something that it protects certain individuals in certain cases?
Okay, but what I'm making a point here is this is going to, not protecting certain individuals. I want to protect society as a whole, and by decriminalizing drugs, I will be protecting society as a whole. No, thank you. I'm making the point here. Okay. Also, by decriminalizing drugs, we will be freeing up police time. In Mexico, they've decriminalized possession of drugs, and in doing so, they have freed up a lot of federal agents' times, allowing them to go after the real bad guys here, the drug traffickers. The individual drug taker, which I will go on to later in my second point, is not the real criminal and not the real harm to society. These traffickers are. And with more freed up time, the government and police can go after these traffickers. Also, American think tanks have discovered that 70% of Mexico's drug gangs or cartels 70% of their income comes in from the north, from America. So if we decriminalise drugs in America as a whole, and perhaps in Europe as a whole, sure, we'd be making a lot of drug dealers redundant, but wouldn't that also be better for society? On to my second point, at how it would help the addicts as a whole. I think that the focus, like in Portugal, where they've decriminalised possession of drugs and instead they impound their drugs and encourage into drug treatment centres, I think it would be better to promote treatment for these drug addicts instead of punishing them, instead of putting them into prison for 20 months at a time, meaning they are unemployed for this time, earning no money for their family, and also reducing their likelihood for employment. I think we should be helping these individuals who are victims of drugs and these drug gangs, which if drugs were decriminalised, the government could actually go after them. Thank you. Also, drugs would be more supervised. So we'd be helping the drug addict because there would be less likelihood of overdoses if we were supervising, and if it was done on prescriptions, it'd be safer for the drug addict. And also, we'd be reducing the risk of drugs being mixed with, like, cocaine is commonly known to be mixed with rat poison and crushed glass. We should be thinking about the safety of the individual, as mentioned by my point of information earlier. Also, can I just say, drugs are harming an individual. Yes, the opposition are going to go ahead and tell me how, society at whole is damaged, but in reality, no. The person who takes the drugs is harming their own body and making their decision. No, thank you. They have the freedom to make that decision. Sure, we can stand here and say it's a stupid decision, but, shouldn't we as human beings be protecting the right to this decision? We on the proposition think so. Also, if we ban addictive things, I think, especially the college society, is kind of screwed. Because banning addictive things, such as, like, say, sex, shopping, alcohol, like I said, college society would be screwed, but not in a good way. Let me move on to my third point, about how it would be a source of revenue, as, the economy is a big talked about point here, and I want to just throw in the word recession, so I can say I was the first one to mention it in tonight's debate. Okay. So this would have a great source of revenue for the government. I mean, don't you think it is better to give the money to the government instead of the drug dealers and the gangs? I think so. Sure, people say the government is a gang, but they're a more supervised gang and follow stricter rules, other than, shooting each other if things go wrong. And like I said, this would help society as a whole. If you're taxed, let's say if we introduce a tax of €50 on every ounce of drugs sold, wouldn't this be more fruitful for the economy than, say, €100 fines for every drug dealer they catch? I think it would be. This money could be funneled into education, welfare, health, like I said, helping society as a whole. Moving me quickly on to my fourth point before the bell rings too much. This legislation would make things more controlled. It would protect society as a whole because it would stop underage drug users, which I think everyone here can agree is a good thing, as well as hopefully keeping it more behind closed doors so less people are exposed to this, which would be safer for everybody. Also, just before I finish, like I said previously, there's a freedom to choice in society. And I think it is a valid decision if you choose to harm your own body, as many people do through smoking and drinking. Why not through drugs? As I've outlined this evening, it would help a lot more people than it damages. So I urge you all to propose this motion. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the College Historical Society, ladies and gentlemen, I have an extremely intimidating stack of notes, but I only have 4 words on each page, so you don't need to worry that much. First of all, I'm going to talk about drugs, all drugs and certain drugs, and then I'm going to talk about the state and the individual, and why I think that it's important for the sake of the individual and also the state of society that we keep drugs illegal. And finally, I'm going to talk about vulnerable individuals and how these are the people who are most likely to be harmed by these measures that come into place. So it wasn't really explicitly stated by by Circuit, what is a drug? And I would say that a drug is a chemical substance that you ingest or consume in some way, and it's something that affects your mental or your emotional state. And this is including, but not limited to, things like alcohol, heroin, cocaine, quaaludes. And so I wanted to look at why do people take drugs? Because this is something that we need to look at if we're going to examine whether people should and shouldn't be allowed to take them. And one of the big reasons is that people take drugs because they think it will make them have a good time, and that it's something that they'll enjoy, and it's just for fun. And first of all, like, I think it's immensely sad if the only way that you can have a good time and the only way that you can have fun is if you're taking drugs. And I think, no thank you, I think that if you can't have fun without drugs, you have much bigger problems in hand. And I think that in a case like this, if you're allowed to take drugs, all that's happening is that you're being distracted from the much bigger problems, like your crippling social inabilities. And we think that it's important that you tackle these things, no thank you, rather than you pop another pill. And then similarly, we think that people sometimes take drugs to escape. And things like, that people really should and do want to escape from. And things like bleak poverty or the crushing mundanity of everyday life. No thank you. And we say that again, if you let people take drugs, it deprives them of the misery that stirs them to make a change. And we think that there is no justification. There is no... No. And I think that for these reasons, there's no real and genuine need to justify legalising drugs. So I want to talk about some of the dangers of drugs. And, no, thank you. And what drugs are. As many drugs are immensely addictive, and it's not something that you can just try it once and then never try it again. With a lot of things, I'm not saying every single thing, I'm saying many things, and this is legalise all drugs. It's not legalise some drugs. It's not chop and change between drugs. It's all drugs. And we say that if you let in some drugs that are okay, maybe that's fine, but that's a different debate. This is all drugs. So yeah, no thank you. Vast amounts of drugs are horribly addictive. Vast amounts of drugs, when you try them, you can't untry them. There is no opt-out clause. They can and they will consume your whole life unless you have immense willpower and you are incredibly fortunate. No thank you, because huge amounts of people try these things and are trapped in them. And we think that, there's something that's been suggested here is that, like, if we legalise drugs, well, like, think of the revenue, you know what I mean? Like, huge amounts of money. And we say that it is wrong, no thank you, Jamie, to benefit from people having to pay taxes, no thank you, on something that they can't opt out of. It's like taxing people, no thank you, for breathing, because, breathing is a pain, we'd much rather not do it, but frankly, we're addicted. And we think that another danger that comes from drugs is the fact that it can and does alter your personality. And not just in it makes you more cool kind of way, but that it changes your essential temperament. It changes how you view the world. No thank you. And it changes how you make decisions for your future. And we say that we don't know if you can ever opt out of some sort of change that is this fundamental. So that's why I think drugs generally are bad. Not just because they're addictive, but also because they change who you are. And that these two things, neither of them comes with an opt-out clause. That once you've done it, there's potentially no going back. We think that it's dangerous to make choices that limit you for the rest of for your future. No thank you. So then I want to talk about the state and the individual, and what the state does, and how the state operates, and whether this is an action the state should take. So, like, what is the state, just briefly? We said that the state provides facilities and provides a structure. We said that the state allows us our freedom to do pretty much whatever we like, as long as it doesn't impinge on the freedom of others or on the workings of society. And I'd like to expand on this and show why legalising drugs would do both. Because we say that other individuals are, on some level, affected by every single one of our decisions. And obviously we don't let this, restrict every decision that we make. But we say that when it comes to something like drugs, the consequences of the decisions are so huge, and they are especially huge for the people who are closest to us. No thank you. And we say that in cases like this, your mom does not choose to watch you derail your life, no thank you, because you've become addicted to drugs. And we say that your sister doesn't choose to have you steal her crystal Swarovski swans so that you can hawk them on a street corner because you need to feed your habit. No thank you, whether you're buying those drugs for the government or not. We say that your children do not choose to have a half-functioning parent or an intermittently there person in their lives. We say these are fundamental harms that your choices are inflicting on other people. And we say that is why, no thank you, it's all right for the state to step in, because these harms are severe enough and they merit it. No thank you. So I want to talk about society as a whole, because I think the smooth running of society is threatened by people whose value systems have been altered irrevocably and vastly from the social norm. And we say that in a case like this, when people become addicted to drugs, what's important is no longer their sister's crystal Swarovski swans or their children. What's important is drugs. And we say that when people no longer have the same priorities as other people, no thank you, it tears at the fabric of society. We say that society can no longer function when everyone doesn't have common or similar aims. Because what we're not talking about here, no thank you, is we're not talking about how certain values change over time, once we valued racism, now we don't. We're talking about how people take a change from a different moral structure. We're talking about how people abandon a moral structure. We're talking about how people abandon a social structure, that they're not substituting one for the other. They're not, changing on a scale. We're saying they're abandoning a scale entirely. No, thank you. And we think that this is dangerous, that it affects how society runs as a whole. So finally, I just want to talk about vulnerable people, because we said that some people are, like, we recognise from the fact that we're people, we're individuals, and we know other people, that certain people are strong-minded, that certain people have strength of character, and that some people are, sensible and rational enough never to take a risk that can imperil something as precious as their sense of self and their entire future. But we know from personal experience that other people are much more malleable and even, yes, more stupid. And we think that these people are much more likely to suffer the adverse effects of bringing in legislation that would, like, legalise drugs. So I wanted to take a kind of a stupid example and say jaywalking. That there's an argument to be made that for most people it's not really all that dangerous, but for some people it proves fatal. And we think that the state keeps it illegal to make it even more frightening, because we recognise that people, if the incentive not to do it is taken away, more people will do it and more people will put themselves at risk. And we recognise that even with objective information, like that if you drink too much you're going to end up crying and drunk driving your boyfriend to tell him you still love him, some people still make the wrong decisions. And we think that in a case like this, where the decision has the capacity to be so very wrong, to inflict such long-term harms, it's important for the state to step in and to say that this is a necessary action. So what have I talked to you about today? I've talked to you about why drugs in themselves are harmful. I've talked about how drugs harm the individual. Your decision to take drugs can harm the individual. And I've talked about why drugs harm this fabric of society.
So basically what I want to talk to you about is why people take drugs with a more kind of positive perspective on it, and the problems that these people encounter, and why the legislation at the moment is unjust, and why legalising all drugs is the obvious solution. So why do we take drugs? Well, when people take any kind of drug, it gives them a perspective that they couldn't otherwise have. So I'll talk about some of the popular ones. Cannabis, probably the most popular, I think. It relaxes you, makes you giddy. MDMA, people love it. They love each other, they can dance all night. So they go out, they take some and they go home. And LSD, I'll probably talk about this a bit more. So this will alter your state of consciousness. You feel like there's no boundaries between kind of you and everything else. You feel more part of everything than you do usually. No, thank you. So some people that you probably know took a lot of LSD. Ken Kesey, the guy who wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, drove around the United States in a school bus giving people LSD. This is in the 60s. Timothy Leary, you might have heard of him, did somewhat the same thing. He also pioneered using psychoactive drugs in treating alcoholics, and when they outlawed it, obviously the people using it were finding it hard. One they still use is ketamine because it isn't illegal, but these researchers find it very hard, no thank you, to get the drugs they need to do the research, and it's proven, like statistically speaking, it's shown that it does work, but they're just finding it very hard. No thanks. So I think they're the main ones. The altering consciousness is a great pastime, and it's definitely one of my favourites. And my point is that if somebody wants to do this and they've no intention of doing causing any harm to other people, yes, go ahead.
Isn't the problem that regardless of your intentions, hallucinogenic drugs can cause you to do things that you wouldn't have otherwise chosen to do, and as a consequence, your choice to take the drugs affects other people's ability to be safe around you?
Not really, because I think most of the time you are fine. I've been taking drugs for 6 years. I've never impinged so much on somebody else that they've had to call me up on it. I think a statistic somebody gave me before I came in, 9% of 15 to 35-year-olds in Ireland have taken ecstasy. I think I have it written down. 7.5% cocaine. So that's 1 in 10 people in this room, and I don't think 1 in 10 people that you know, and I don't think that 1 in 10 people that you know are messing their lives up or messing your life up. So anyway, the problems that people like us face because of the law that's there today, getting drugs isn't a problem. Anybody can get drugs if you want them. So the problem isn't really getting a hand on it, it's the quality of the drugs that we have to take. Because they're illegal, because there's not a safe market for me to go out and buy, there's no one I can complain to if I get really, really sick. There's no way I can stop the person who sold it to me selling it on to anybody else. And the problem, obviously, if I get caught. Drugs, they can be the unregulated manufacture and the contaminants that you can find in it. They probably contribute to all the problems that you hear about, like the health hazards and stuff. Like that will probably be a lot to do with getting caught. So under the Misuse of Drugs Act, anyone found in possession of cannabis is guilty of an offence, obviously, and 3 times for just having enough for a joint, and you can go to prison, which is ridiculous. Growing weed. Say you're such a good citizen that you don't want to contribute to the illegal drug trade, so you decide to grow your own. If you get caught once, you can go to jail for 14 years. Okay? And the people selling drugs, like people say drug dealers, and like this guy who got caught, making or growing his own cannabis, and he gets labelled a drug dealer. Maybe he was selling it to his friends. All he's doing is selling it to his friends. They choose to do it. They just want to have a good time. So, I don't see why, that should be illegal. There shouldn't be that kind of punishment for that. So that brings me to my next point. What about people who aren't having a good time? Because I can't deny that some bad things happen to do with drugs. So apparently, apart from all the fun that you can have on drugs, drugs are bad. And we've been told this our whole lives, like things like if you take ecstasy, you will die the first time you take it. If you take acid, you will think that you can fly and you will jump off a building. That doesn't happen. Maybe once, somebody, like I think I heard a few years ago, a girl, that means I have to stop, doesn't it? Yeah, okay, so basically my point is, if I want to do it, I should be allowed to do it, and the government shouldn't be able to choose what drugs are bad for me that I can do, like cigarettes and alcohol, and what drugs are bad for me that I can't do, that maybe have much more positive benefits. So basically, drugs are fun. I just want to have a good time, and that should not be legal. Thank you.
I'd like to call on our second speaker against the motion, Amy Bell.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Auditor, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen of the College Historical Society, and ladies and gentlemen. I'm very glad to be able to speak on this motion because it's something I feel very strongly about, and I'm going to get straight into it. The question here is freedom of choice, whether the state is allowed or whether the state should allow people to make the choice to take drugs. And we say no, that freedom of choice should not be allowed. Okay, why do I say this? And I don't say it because it's potentially life-threatening, even though it is. I don't say it because it's a valuable commodity in the economics of the underground market, even though it is. And I'm not saying it because it's fun and I believe in a state that should be a killjoy. and even though it is fun, and I do believe that the state should be somewhat of a killjoy, but I believe in this side of the house because it's a wrong thing to do. It's wrong and it's tearing our society apart. I think, and moreover, that indeed the proposal that before us tonight is counterproductive. 3 reasons why I think it's wrong. I think the present ban as it stands at the moment is a necessary step of self-preservation. It's something that a rational society must do to preserve itself. Secondly, I think this is my main point, that it undermines the central principle on which society is founded on. And that principle is that we all are in this together. And I'll get back to that later. The final principle and the final reason why I think this is wrong, I think this programme, and Kate spoke about this already, she spoke about how this proposal serves to discourage engagement with real societal problems. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about is why is this a necessary step in the self-preservation of the society and the self-preservation of rational thought? To set this up, I need to say, why are we here today? Why are we having this dialectic now? Why at this point in time? Well, the point is, thinkers have gone before us, hundreds of years before us, and we respect the heritage of their thought. We say that when they came up with these good ideas about discourse and about debate and about logic, we say that they weren't, and I have it here, the opiate-scented musings of an addict, because they weren't, which is to be true, because they were sensible people. They were actually thinking about the issues at hand. And the issue was raised by Orla that we have so many artists that are being fueled by drugs. And I raised the question too. I think there's two problems with this. I think, number one, if an artist takes a drug and produces a piece of art, number one, how representative is that of humanity if it's fueled by drugs? But secondly, would they have achieved the same artistic end given a same length of time, a longer length of time? I think
on
we
that
should
point,
sit down. Yeah, go for it.
Later Hot Chili Peppers work versus early Hot Chili Peppers work.
Okay. I like the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I like music. I like loads of things. I don't want to talk about it. I really don't want to talk about the pettiness of artists. And I know I did raise the issue, and I sort of left myself open for that. But I would come under, I'd put that under the things about, whether that's really representative of humanity. And I think some of the stuff they sing about really isn't representative of humanity at all. Okay, so, no thanks. Right. How did they achieve these philosophical principles? Well, I say it was from unadulterated self-examination and reflection. Reason has got us this far, and I think it is going to get us further. Now, I think that psychoactive drugs are counter to reason because they interfere, they mutate our ability to rationalise, our ability to take things in from the world, and our ability to vocalise these opinions. I say that reason abhors